Obviously, welcome to the 22 Critical Podcast. I'm here with my brother James.
What's up?
And I will link James's YouTube in the description. He has a channel where he does this a lot more than I do. So if you enjoy this type of stuff, go check that out. And we're just going to start out with our top 10 movies of the year. So we just do our turns. We go from 10 to 1, obviously. And there will be open conversation about the movies as they go on, but that will pretty much be that. So without further ado, I guess we're gonna get this sucker right underway. So I guess I'll start since I'm the channel owner. And my number 10 movie, I guess it's just a very simple one that I just the professional podcast over here. It's a very simple one, just for the pure enjoyment of it. That was Glass Onion. I just really liked Glass Onion. There's really not a lot I have to say except that I just loved all the actors. I love the setting. I love the funness of the movie. And you'll find a lot of the movies I liked this year, I just liked it because they were fun. I don't know. I just love movies that kind of let themselves go and just sort of have fun. So this movie was really nice. Obviously, Daniel Craig is a highlight again. He just always blows me away with how good he is. So that's my number 10. Pretty simple, nothing crazy.
Yeah. Well, my number 10 is one that I saw pretty early in the year, and it stayed with me all year. And it wasn't necessarily one that I was expecting to, because it's a bit more of a subtle movie in terms of what it does, but it really connected with me. And it's called The Fallout. It is about a girl's reactions to experiencing a school shooting that she survives. And she connects with some other people who she was with during the time of the school shooting and all the trauma that comes from that. I guess as a teacher, it really did connect with me seeing something like that. And I thought the movie handled it really well. I don't think it was very exploitative of the issue. It did a good job of dealing with the emotions in a way that made sense, and I think it really nailed how Gen Z acts too. The director did. I interact with a lot of Gen Z people because as a teacher, so I know how they are, and this was high schoolers too, so double for me since I also teach high school, and I thought they did really well. Also, Jenna Ortega was in this, who has exploded in a big way this year ever since that Netflix show, but this was sort of before she had like her big explosion, but I think this is her best performance of the year. I've seen Wednesday, and she's good in Scream too, but I think this was her best by far. She really nailed it in here. Also, Maddie Ziegler, who's more known for dancing, was in this, and she was pretty good. And yeah, I just thought it was a really well done movie emotionally, so stayed with me all year long.
My number 9 movie I have on here just because of more of the emotional impact that it had rather than me just because I thought, it's Black Panther, and wow, I thought it was an extremely mediocre movie overall. Just the context behind it and the tribute it was to Chadwick Boseman was enough to make it a top 10. I just know everyone in that crew, coming from someone who works on a crew, everyone who I just know that I have to imagine the people on that crew had a tough time making that movie, and it's just, that was one of the crazier losses of it's gonna reconnect, and we are back like it never happened. This is what we love about streaming and why I don't do it. Anyways, so yeah, I thought the movie was great overall, just for the actors and for the sake of it being the type of tribute that it was.
Okay. My number 9 is a movie that I would say is one of those rare instances where the sequel is better than the original, and that is Top Gun Maverick. This was just a blockbuster experience in every sense of the word. You don't get many of those these days, where it's just like a big feeling movie, where it feels like you can tell that there was a big budget put into it, a lot of care put into it, and it feels like a movie you don't see as much anymore, and I really enjoyed it for that reason. I just thought it was a really fun movie overall, good action. I think it had a lot more emotion, a lot more of a heart to it than the first one did. I thought it was a lot more propulsive, and you could really feel the action when it was happening, especially on the big screen. It was incredible. And Tom Cruise delivered an excellent performance. It was almost sort of a commentary on him in a way, as he is sort of a older action star now, but he's still got it. He's still got it even now, and he's like sort of a dying breed, like his type of actor is, like those that are considered larger than life. But I thought it was just a really fun movie. I really liked everyone's performances in it. I also thought that Miles Teller was excellent in it, and if he's gonna continue on with like doing the Top Gun legacy, I would not complain about that at all, because I thought he was great. Yeah, it was just an overall very solid action movie that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, that would definitely be on my honorable mentions. I mean, I just purely love that movie for the types of camera stuff they did with it. I just appreciate that type of stuff so much. I know they went all out with that stuff.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Very impressive movie visually, and the story was passable enough. So, my number 8, and listen, I'm going to start this off by saying I am very happy that there are so many horror movies on my list this year. And I think this was one of the best years for horror movies in a very long time.
Yeah, it was a good year.
This one is my lowest rated horror movie of the year, but it's Scream, and I just really, I don't know, there's something about Scream that I just love. I don't know if it's the you know, joking nature of it, or you know, the parodical, if that's a word, nature of it. But you know, the cast was great. You know, Jenna Ortega, obviously one of the more shining stars, I guess, and you know, I just thought the movie did a really, it was more brutal than you'd expect from a Scream movie, I guess, but like I just thought, you know, the thing as a whole, it's, again, my bottom 4, I don't have a lot to say except that I just liked the movie for the fact that they were just fun movies, and I thought it was a fun horror movie with a pretty simple twist. But the thing that I love about these types of movies is that they give you what you expect. They make you think that it's not going to be what you expect, and then it is what you expect to begin with. Like, you know, we predicted one if not both of the killers within the first like 5 minutes of the movie. So I really think that that's just the power of that type of that movie, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the new one coming out next year. Yeah, it looks good as well.
Scream franchise is one of the few horror franchises where almost every movie in it is good. For me, my number 8 is one that I saw, I would say, fairly recently, but it is one that really impressed me. It's a very simple movie at its core, but has a lot of complexity to it when you unpack it, and it's called The Banshees of Inisherin. It takes place in Ireland, and the simple, basic premise of it is that these two main characters, one of the characters played by Brendan Gleeson and the other played by Colin Farrell, Colin Farrell plays the main character, I guess you could say, but his friend decides that he doesn't want to be friends with him anymore. And then the whole story is exploring, like, the idea of why this friendship is being lost, and as well as, like, the idea of what is considered living a good life, whether it's actually making a difference or just being a good person in general. It's really interesting. And it's almost darkly comedic, the lengths that the other person will go to keep the friendship broken. He said, if you keep bothering me, I will cut my fingers off one by one. And he literally does that in the movie. It is wild. And the movie goes to some very dark places, like Colin Farrell plays against character type, I would say, for him. He usually plays very dark characters, but his character in this is very funny, actually. But then, sort of by the end, he's sort of playing the type of person you expect him to play, is all I'll say. I think it's a really cool movie, a lot of cool stuff happening in it, and it's already won a lot of awards, which does not surprise me, but I think it's one that you really need to experience just to see what it's all about, because it is a very simple movie, but there's a lot of cool things going on in it.
My number 7 movie, I actually flipped these around a lot because there was one that I forgot about until right before we did this that I didn't put on there, and I realized, wow, I didn't put that on there. But my number 7 is a movie in a franchise that I probably wouldn't have had in my top 10 if it hadn't been for this movie, but like it's Prey, and Prey is a Predator movie. It's a super duper prequel, like when the Predators are first coming to, you know, planet Earth and stuff like that. It's a very, and this one is more sort of, I guess you'd call it Native American themed. The protagonists have very limited weaponry, and the Predator has the craziest amount of weaponry we've probably ever seen. But the movie's strength comes from the fact that it plays into a more thriller stalker atmosphere, which I thought it was very interesting. It's a very slow, methodical movie, and I think the movie's biggest strength, of course, I just think it was one of the better cinematography-wise movies. Every scene was really well thought out, well put together, a lot of really good, really cool visual storytelling. Like I remember this one scene, I think it was in the very beginning, where like, I don't know, it was like an ant getting eaten by a spider, and then a spider getting eaten by a snake or something along those lines. Just really good visual direction and visual storytelling matched with one of the more fun villains in the, I don't know, I guess you'd call it the slasher genre technically, but I just think the Predator is such a cool villain, and they really made him a visceral villain in this movie particularly. So
At number 7 for me is a movie that I thought would be higher this year, but this year was very strong for movies, I thought, overall. Like, I saw so many good movies. But this one's still great, make no doubt about that, and that is The Northman, Robert Eggers' latest movie, and I absolutely love this director. I love that he just does something radically different with every single movie. Like, his movies are incredibly different from one another, and you could tell that they gave him a bigger budget for this movie because it does feel more like an epic than his very drawn back The Lighthouse or the more horror-driven The Witch. It's very different from those two. I wouldn't even really, for the most part, call it a horror movie. There are some horrific elements in there, but it is more of a revenge tale than anything else, which there are some cliches to it, like it does follow some typical beats that you would think of for a revenge story, but I think the way it's presented is what makes it work so well. And it is one of the most, if not the most brutal movie I saw this year. The action is insane. It doesn't pull any punches, and yeah, all the performances in this are great. Alexander Skarsgård is an absolute legend. All the Skarsgård are great actors, but he might be my favorite among them. I just love the way he performs. Anya Taylor-Joy is, of course, great in this. That should go without saying. She's great in everything. I really liked Willem Dafoe in this. He was playing pretty much with his character type, but his character was so much fun. And the person who played the uncle was also really good. I liked that they gave him a lot of complexity. Like, he's a character that clearly did something horrible, but he's not the only horrible person in this. In fact, the main character makes a lot of morally questionable decisions too, so it's not really easy to side with anyone in this movie, which is what makes the revenge tale more interesting to me. But this was just a huge action movie, so fun, and of course it being sort of derived from Shakespeare was something that I liked too, so just an all-around great movie that worked for me.
Going into number 6, this was another really obvious, and I will later be talking about The Northman, so that just be aware of that. But my number 6 is another horror movie. This one was another one just kind of really fun, really simple. It's Bodies, and you know, it has this cast that you wouldn't really expect to do anything special with a movie like this, but it's comedic horror through and through. I just think, like, you know, all the actors do a really stellar job of just playing into their Gen Z part. You know, it's basically like if, you know, I don't know, what was the comparison we made? I guess
I think if Scream was a Gen Z film, is just what I thought.
If Scream started out in 2022, that's what this movie would be.
Yeah.
And the plot twist is hilariously well deserved for how
so good.
It's such an ingenious plot twist. I don't know really where this movie came from or how it came about, but it was probably the biggest surprise of this year how much I actually loved this movie. So yeah.
Yeah, weirdly straightforward A24 movie this year. In fact, A24 did a lot more straightforward movies this year.
10 movies this year also.
Yeah, they went crazy. They were, Bodies would be an honorable mention of mine. Surprisingly, it didn't make my top 10, but I really loved it. It's a significant honorable mention for me. At number 6 is a movie that originally was in my top 3 for ages. But once again, like I said, this was a superb year for movies, so it went down to 6, but this one is also excellent, and it is the newest Batman movie for me. I knew this movie was going to be good. The trailers just were showing so much promise, and I didn't think this movie was going to disappoint me, considering the director is very talented. He made those great Planet of the Apes movies, all 3 of which are underrated bangers in my opinion. This is excellent. It's pretty close to at least the Dark Knight. Or not The Dark Knight, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises for me. It might even be better than both of those for me at this point. I just love what this movie does with Batman. I think it really does an interesting twist that the other Batman movies don't do, where it sort of commentates on how Batman really is who Bruce is in this movie, and that Bruce is more of the mask that he wears, which is a super interesting twist on it that I really liked. And it was interesting to have a Batman that was more inexperienced and more rough around the edges, trying to figure out who he was. And I really think they nailed what Batman was supposed to be in this story. They made him more of a classic hero in this in many ways. They were emphasizing on the anti-hero aspect at first, but they sort of showed how that isn't who he's supposed to be. He's not supposed to be an anti-hero. He's supposed to be just a good guy in general, which I really liked. Of course, probably the best villain performance of the year from Paul Dano in The Riddler. It was nice just to have a straight-up evil, menacing villain in a superhero movie.
He was so good.
Yeah.
He was so good.
I feel like we just don't get that many good superhero villains anymore, and the ones that are villains are not technically villains a lot of the time, but this guy was just full-blown. He was like a horror villain, basically. He was terrifying, and the Ave Maria scene is one of the best acting performances I saw all year long. He was so good. I liked the way they portrayed Catwoman in this as well. Colin Farrell as a Penguin was hilarious. Even though Andy Serkis wasn't in it nearly as much as Butler, I really liked him, and I hope we see more out of him in the sequels, because I really liked what they were doing with his performance. But Robert Pattinson was, of course, the shining star here. He was superb as Batman, and anyone who doubted him, I just have to say that you don't know what you're missing out on if you didn't check out this movie.
Him and Alexander Skarsgård and heck, freaking Bill Skarsgård are all 3 in the runnings for the best actors of this generation so far. And they all 3 come from pasts that are like, well, we're not sure about them, but like now you have to be sure about them, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like I have to say this time and time again, you need to stop judging Robert Pattinson by the Twilight movies. I think he's shown clearly now that
just watch The Lighthouse and you know everything you need to know.
Watch The Lighthouse, watch Good Time, watch this. Robert Pattinson's a superb actor. But yeah, this was such a great comic book movie, and my favorite superhero movie of the year for me.
Oh yeah. Getting into the top 5 now, I will say this has got to be one of the stronger top 5s that I've had since, probably the strongest top 5 since 2019. Mm-hmm. And if you know what came out in 2019, oh boy!
Yeah, 2019 was a strong year. Whew.
So my number 5 is by a director that I absolutely love, even though I didn't really like his last movie. It's Nope by Jordan Peele. I just absolutely love this guy. He's so interesting, so unique. And this is one of the more interesting horror movies that I've seen in a while. And I was really excited for this movie because we don't get a lot of horror themed extraterrestrial movies anymore. and I just thought the twist was really interesting. There's a lot of thought-provoking commentary on like, it's if you've seen the movie you would know. If you don't, it's basically like the whole theme of the movie is sort of like, what will you do to get that one shot? And it's like it's meta commentary in a way, because it's a movie obviously, and it's making commentary about like, what are you gonna do? Like, these people are desperate to get this one shot of this UFO that most people don't believe even exists, and the twist on what the UFO is really cool. And there's just some really great visual stuff in here too. I just think of like, those ending moments when the thing happens. If you know what the thing is, then I don't know. I just love the visuals, and as a film nerd, it was just really cool what like they did with the UFO to tie it into the theme. And obviously, I think Daniel Kaluuya and who was the girl in that movie who I forgot her name? Kiki Palmer. Kiki Palmer. She did a really
Steven Yeun.
The Steven Yeun. Yeah, there's all three great casting, and there's just this really weird like scene with the monkey that never made any sense, but it's just a creepy, unsettling movie, and I just loved it. I loved it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think my number 5 is directed by someone who inspired Jordan Peele, and that is The Fabelmans, which was directed by Steven Spielberg. Yeah. This is the most recent movie I saw, but the fact that it shot up to number 5 should tell you how much I loved it. There might be a little bit of recency bias there, but I don't think so. I think, if anything, this movie could shoot up higher for me, because I absolutely loved this. Now, some people might do a little bit of an eye roll at this movie because it is a movie about movies. But to me, I think there's one key thing that makes this a little better than those other ones. It's a movie about making movies more than anything else. And it is a story about Steven Spielberg, I think. His name is never said in here, but the Fableman, the main character is someone who loves making movies from a kid until adulthood. I think it's about Spielberg, clearly, and Spielberg has basically confirmed that in interviews and stuff. And I think it's just a really inspiring movie, and if you love movies, if you love making movies, then this movie is from one of the greats, and I think it's sort of required watching for that type of subject matter. I think it's just so well done and shows Spielberg sort of at the top of his craft. The person that plays sort of his symbolic character is excellent in this. Both the kid and the teenager version of him are excellent in this. Michelle Williams is superb in this as well. She gives a performance that I'm sure is going to get some Oscar nominations. And Paul Dano was in this too, playing a very different character in here. He was playing the dad, and he was awesome in this. I loved him, and it was just sort of nice to see him like... He was playing an engineer who didn't really understand like why his son was inspired by films, but still helped him and assisted him in his journey. And it was really inspiring to watch like him helping him despite them having disconnects. And it's not just a movie about filmmaking; it's a movie about family, about anti-Semitism even, because I didn't know this, but apparently Steven Spielberg is Jewish, and he addresses the anti-Semitism that he experienced when he was younger in this movie, and it was really powerful the way he fought back against it through his filmmaking and through proving everyone wrong, essentially. And there are some genius shots in here too, just some really genius ones that show why he's one of the masters. I've heard rumors that this could be his last movie, which if it is, it's a good one to go out on for sure, and it would make a lot of sense. But this is a masterpiece in my opinion.
I can't imagine a filmmaking world without Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Man. My number 4 is one that I said I would talk about, and I will talk about. There's not a lot I had to add, but it's The Northman. There's not a lot I have to add to what James said. This movie is just absolutely phenomenal. I love Robert Eggers. He's and I just think his film repertoire and just being a Viking themed movie, I don't know, you don't get a lot of those very often. I'm pretty sure he said people asked him, why don't you make movies in the modern age, and he's like, why would I do that? Basically something like that. He's just intact with what those old times were really like. And I mean, especially this movie, it's just like James said, Alexander Skarsgård's ingenious performance, Anya Taylor-Joy the same way, Uncle the same way. The the movie flips the revenge story on its head for a brief second before going back to the revenge story. It's a revenge story that makes you think the character will be redeemed, but in the end, it is not. It's very much so like a tale about not being able to leave your demons behind, and it's a very 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 brutal action movie. And on top of that, it has some of the more beautiful, like, I'll talk about cinematography just because I'm a film guy, but I just love a lot of the shots in this movie, the beauty of wherever they shot. I'm assuming they shot it in Norway, but I have no idea. This movie was just gorgeous to look at, and the final scene was just incredibly pulse pounding. It was just awesome the way they did it. So yeah.
Yeah. My number 4 is a movie that I think will be regarded as a horror classic in the future, and that is Barbarian. This movie, neither me or Joseph saw what was happening and what was coming in it. It is the most insane movie experience I had this year, and I mean that in the best way possible. There just aren't that many horror movies out there like this anymore. It feels like a throwback to the classic horror in some ways, but also it does have distinctly modern horror in it as well. It feels like a marriage of the two in the best way possible. It is an incredibly smart movie in what it does, and it just sort of keeps you on your toes the whole time. You never know what is going to happen next, and I think it's just sort of a wild movie in every regard. The performances are awesome. I think Georgina Campbell, I don't know if this is her debut performance or not, but whatever the case, this is the first thing I've seen her in, and she's excellent in it. Bill Skarsgård is great in it too, and then Justin Long, when he appears, provides a really interesting performance that might have come across as the biggest highlight of the movie in some ways with how he played his character. I don't want to reveal much about it because if you haven't seen it, it's just one you sort of need to experience it for yourself. If you're a horror fan, I think this one is sort of a must-watch because it is truly an experience to behold, I think.
All right, into the top 3, and now that I'm caught back up to where I should be, my number 3 is, again, one that James has already mentioned. It's The Batman. Listen, man, I just love the way they did this movie. James, again, said pretty much everything that I agree with. I just have to once again give props to the cinematographer. I don't even remember who it is, and I hate that I don't remember who it is, but I just absolutely... there are just individual shots in this movie that are just jaw-droppingly gorgeous. It's like, I just always think of that shot where he's leading the people through the water. It's just like, there's just so many shots that are like indicative of what they're trying to do with his character. And just the cast all around, Robert Pattinson, everyone involved. It's just a great superhero movie. It doesn't necessarily, bring it back to its roots per se, but it's what you'd expect from a mix of a more typical comic book movie with that little sprinkle of Dark Knight crime thriller in it, with a little sprinkle of all that other stuff. So it's just a really great movie, great actors overall. Again, I don't have anything to add to what James said because pretty much he said everything I agree with. But I just absolutely loved that movie.
Yeah. At my number 3 is a movie that I'm sure is going to be number 1 for a lot of people, and I do not blame anyone who has this at number 1 because this is an awesome movie. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. This was probably A24's most A24 movie this year, I would say. Because of just how sort of crazy off the walls it was in many places, but I think that what this movie did work so well. It was a very ambitious movie to try and do what it did. Just all this like different multiverses and stuff like that. But in this one movie, they managed to nail the multiverse better than Marvel has in like 5 different movies this year. It's sort of incredible how much better they nailed it here, and I think that's because there's also sort of an emotional core at the center of the multiverse too, with the message of the main character just sort of underestimating the value of her family, and then rediscovering that through all these different experiences that she has. And I mean, this movie is just so excellent in what it does. It's funny, it's heartwarming, It's creative. It's incredibly interesting to watch at all times, and visually just invigorating. I mean, this movie literally is at what it says. I mean, it has a little bit of everything in it, and I think all the performances are great. Michelle Yeoh is excellent as the lead performance. Ke Huy Quan is awesome in this. He's sort of come on top as what many people view as the highlight of the movie, and I can understand why, because his performance is so funny but also so heartwarming, and there's just a great line that he says in one of the multiverses that is one of the best lines of the year, in my opinion. And Stephanie Sue playing the daughter is really interesting too. I really like what they do with her character, and it's just sort of fascinating that a movie with literal rocks with googly eyes on them could make you emotional in a particular scene. But it is absolutely genius in what it does, and it just every idea it has for the multiverse it has, and I love that it just sort of goes there. Yeah, this is an excellent movie with a great emotional core, and it's nearly pitch perfect in my opinion. I can easily understand why many regard this as the best movie of the year.
My number 2 movie came so far out of left field that it might as well have come from another planet. And it's a movie that I just sort of swept it aside because like, it's just going to be another whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if there's going to be anyone in this room more surprised than the person sitting next to me, but my number 2 movie of this year was Bullet Train.
Oh, really?
I watched this movie just a few months ago, and it's just a rowdy good time. I think it's actually got to be one of my top 3 favorite Brad Pitt performances. It was just such a funny movie. I laugh out loud moments, literally. The whole cast was great. Seeing Michael Shannon is always a treat. He did a fantastic job as White Death, even though the character really doesn't show up that much. The highlight of this movie is actually Joey King, who plays the prince. You don't see it coming, the plot twist of like the giant stuffed animal being the villain they're looking for the whole time. But it's so funny. The movie's just so funny. There's this great duo of Tangerine and Lemon. They're just a bombastically hilarious duo.
Funny. They're so funny.
And it's just an all around it's one of those movies that's just like a movie. It's just like it's got the action, it's got the comedy, it's got the plot twist, it's got the random reference to Japanese culture in the middle of nowhere that was actually hilariously oddly well done. This movie was a bombastically good time, and it was honestly the performances that surprised me the most. I was like, this movie's just going to be phoned in whatever because it was originally a Japanese film, Bullet Train was, but I thought it was just a really surprisingly faithful adaptation. Still not as good as the original, of course, but it was just a fun movie, and I was surprised how much I absolutely loved it.
My number 2 is literally a movie I saw this weekend, but it shot up there because I don't think any movie...
Can I get a recency bias in the chat?
Yeah, but I don't think any movie profoundly affected me like this one, and this one really snuck up on me while I was watching it. It's called After Sun. It is probably my most simple movie on this list at its core. It's a lot of... It's this idea of home video footage of this daughter reflecting on her relationship with her father. And it takes place, and her reflection takes place through just this one event where they're on a vacation in sort of a rundown resort. And it's sort of her looking back on her memories and realizing that something was going on with her father, but she couldn't comprehend what it was at that time because she was only 11 years old, but her father was clearly in a bad place during that time. And it's a very... I don't know how to pinpoint it exactly. It's just a very emotionally affecting movie, and I think it's just because of how well it nails the sort of kid aspect of knowing something is wrong as a kid, but not being able to figure out what that is. Like, you don't have the mental capacity to emotionally connect with the idea of the more complex emotions that your parent has. It's really compelling the way it does it. I love how they sort of represent the older version of the daughter trying to connect her fractured memories of her dad through this nightclub. Like, there's these flashing lights of her just seeing her dad through strobes, and it's so simple, but it's so well done. Like, you get exactly what they're going for. It's sort of eerie too, which is sort of purposeful because she only has fractures of these memories. And then you also get the memories through like a home video too, so it feels very real in every way. And the performances feel very real too. Paul Mescal, who I've never seen in anything before, he plays the dad. He is so good in this. Probably my favorite performance of the year, if I had to say. He was so good. And the final shot with him just left me with absolute chills. It was so well done. And Frankie Corio, this is her debut performance, and I think she is actually 11, and she is so good in this. One of the best child performances I've seen. She plays an 11-year-old very believably, and I just sort of love the relationship between her and Paul Mescal's character. It was complex. There were ups and downs in it, and it was just a perfect movie. I think what it did. It was 5 out of 5 perfect for me. And while it's deceptive, one of those movies that looks simple on the surface and ends up doing as much as maybe some of these other movies I've done, it nails the emotion so well. So I just loved it for that reason.
There is beauty in simplicity.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the trailers for that one. I might have to see that one.
I think you'd like it.
My number one, I don't think this will come as a surprise to you. It's pretty much a movie that I never stopped talking about since I saw it. From the moment I saw it until now, it has not left my number one spot. It is Barbarian, through and through. This movie takes horror in the best way possible and throws you into one of the most unsettling thrill rides of just... It's very slow at first, and it actually takes a very, very long time to really get anywhere, which is very weird to say about a movie where the whole goal is usually to get somewhere. The whole movie basically takes place in 2 places. The whole first part is in this tiny little building, and it's just I don't know what it is, like, you know, the way they do it is like James said, you don't want to spoil too much, but like just some of the set pieces they do, the way they trick you with stuff, the way they trick you with the setting, and then just flip it on its head. Like, we were 30 minutes in, and then the screen went black after this one part. So it's like, what? Mm-hmm. And then it just changes completely to a different story, and you're like, oh, okay. So there's a little bit more going on, and then it just takes a tumble into Despair Alley, and from there, it's just... This is my strongest 5 out of 5 probably since Blade Runner 2049, and it's got to be one of my top 3 favorite horror movies without a doubt. I just love, you know, Bill Skarsgård puts on a great performance. Georgina Campbell is a great addition, and Justin Long really did give a surprisingly great performance. And I was hilariously reminded that this guy was the young guy in Jeepers Creepers, and I will never, ever, ever get that image out of my mind again. But this movie was just so phenomenally well done, and I gotta see, because like this is from a director I don't think I'd ever even heard of. You know, the cinematography was great. The writer was Zach Kreger, who I've never heard of, and he was the director too. Again, never heard of the guy, but I will probably be very very closely following his work in the future. Again, a very, very strong number one movie of this year. I will not stop thinking about this movie for a long time. So, yeah.
My number one is a movie that when I think of pure cinema, of what I want from a cinema experience, this is a movie that crossed my mind more than any other this year. It was the most delightful movie experience I had all year, the most fun, the most interesting, and it is RRR, which stands for Rise, Roar, Revolt. It is on Netflix, and it is a Indian film, interestingly. It is a Telugu film as well. I mistakenly called it Bollywood in my original review of it, but it's actually Tollywood, according to a Telugu-speaking person who commented that in my YouTube comments. But this movie is 3.5 hours long, and it never once gets boring in that runtime. It is always building on its plot. It is always doing something interesting to build a sort of relationship between these two characters who are meant to represent like real life Indian revolutionaries that actually helped taking over British colonialism during the time of the Indian Revolution. But it is a fictional retelling of their story, and it's interesting to see the perspectives of both of these characters. One who comes from like a very small village, just with the task of saving his daughter, and then the other who has a much bigger, more weightier task of sort of disguising himself as a loyal member of the British Army, but who is trying to take them down from the inside. And while the one is clearly doing something bigger than the other, I like that the movie presents it that both are equally important, like both are important in different ways. And these two sort of form a relationship, but it's also interesting because they both don't know what the other is doing. And it's sort of an interesting tale of them forming this relationship, but both not understanding what the other's goal is. And there's all these twists and turns that happen. And the movie is a little bit of everything. Once again, it has musical elements in it. It is literally a musical about the Indian Revolution, and it is so wild that it works. It's also an action movie with some scenes that I think are just better than any Marvel action movie that came out this year with how they present it. And it is also like a love story. Both people fall in love with people. It is a friendship story. It has so much in it, and it is indescribable how good it is. I just loved what it did, and I think it just is just a masterpiece, and deserves even more love than it already has.
All right, well, that was our top 10s. I mean, are there any honorable mentions? I think my one would probably just be Top Gun.
Yeah, I do have a couple. So my first, I'm not going to talk about these in any crazy detail, but my first is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio on Netflix.
To see that, I forgot.
Oh, this one was close. This one is close to my top 10, and it could get in there with more time because this is the best animated movie, I think. I love Del Toro, and you can tell he just cares about animation. Nope would be another honorable mention for me. Then this movie called Cha-Cha Real Smooth, which is much more serious than the title would imply. Just a really good relationship drama. The Innocents, which is about kids who have superpowers, which is a horror movie, actually. I really liked it. And Bodies, Bodies, Bodies would be my other honorable mention.
All right, so that was our top movies of the year. A lot shorter than usual, but again, that was just because of me, because I don't have a lot to say about my bottom movies usually. But that's going to be our segment on movies